All right, man. So today I want to go over really like as I started typing out what I wanted to talk to you about today for the podcast, it was almost like biggest lesson on this, biggest mistake with this. So it's like this is like the list of biggest shit. And just because I think as I've gotten to know you, you're a very interesting person. I mean that in a really good way, but because
You
you know
said that in a really bad way. It was like, you're very interesting.
I didn't mean to hesitate.
You know, when like you're talking to your buddies and like, you're like, yeah, you know them. Yeah. They're like, yeah, they're interesting. It's
Yeah. So I mean it in like the Dos Equis type of way. You
Oh,
know,
nice.
you know what
Okay.
I mean?
That
So
was
like
good. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of people will watch Instagram, they watch YouTube, and they see all this stuff, and then they just expect there's just this fitness thing, but like as I've gotten to know you, there's just so much more to you as far as like what you study, what you read, where you want to go, what you like in life, like your attitude towards things, martial arts, really just everything. So I kind of want to just pick apart the interesting side of Jordan, really, and just kind of dig into some random topics.
Let's do it. I love it, man.
So the first one is the biggest lesson you've learned from martial arts, which you can take this in any direction, but I know it's hard because I've done martial arts too, so I'll kind of share my 2 cents as well. But
Yeah.
the biggest takeaway so far.
Yeah. Maybe we could jam on this because this is tough. This is like, it's hard to just think of one, but man, I'll say, so I'll start off with something that impacts me daily with this, and then maybe we'll go off on another tangent. But for me, one of the best parts of it, I don't know if this is one of the best lessons, but one of the best aspects of it for me, specifically with jiu-jitsu, is every day when I go in, I know I'm gonna lose. Like I know I'm going to lose. And it's funny because I talk to the blue belts and I talk to the purple belts and the brown belts and the black belts, and everybody says the same thing. Everyone goes in there knowing they're going to get choked out that day, which is so interesting to me that no matter how good you get, there's always someone better.
Mm-hmm.
There's always someone better, and you're always going to lose. And the thing about martial arts and jiu-jitsu that's so interesting to me is if you really break it down, the only reason that when you're getting choked out, the only reason they stop is because this is controlled. Like if this was a real fight, like it taken to the extreme, it would be over. It's essentially a person choking you out until you're dead or breaking your arm, whatever it is, right? And the only reason they stop is because this is a very controlled situation, which is a blessing. Thank God that they're stopping. But it's very interesting because at the end of every session, I already know I've faced the hardest thing for the entire day.
Yeah.
And I know that after like I spent the entire first hour of my day preventing or trying to prevent someone from choking me out, any issue I have throughout the rest of the day is going to be relatively insignificant. And so it makes anything that I either don't want to do or any obstacle that comes up seem all right. Like I already prevented someone from choking me out earlier. I already essentially died earlier today. So I'm good. Like, this is going to be somewhat easy. So it starts my day off. It's funny because this is one of the reasons why I like waking up and making my bed. It's one of the reasons why I like waking up and flossing, because I'm doing things that I don't really like to do, but I'm doing them anyway, and it makes it better. It just makes me more productive, and it starts my day off having an accomplishment. This takes it one step further, which is like, oh no, this is like a really big thing. It's not just making your bed. It's not just flossing. Like you're going to go fight. And then at the end of the fight, then your day can begin and everything else is going to seem very, very easy.
I think successful people, they purposely do difficult things. And sometimes they do it. Like, I think that's the case with a lot of people who are really into ice or cold showers. And I still, every time I think of a cold shower, I think of that one, I think it was on TikTok, but you posted on Instagram where you're just, it's like, do cold showers help fat loss? And you're just walking for like 5 minutes. No, I literally cried when I watched that video. But every time somebody asks me that question, I'm always just like, no, it's just really, really hard to do. And if you do hard things, it hardens you up and you're going to be more successful if you do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. I think it's a habit, right? It's a habit where you put yourself in situations that you deliberately put yourself in a situation where not just even a hard situation that like, you can overcome, but you're deliberately putting yourself in a situation in which there's a strong chance that you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most humbling things for me every day. Like there have been days where like I legitimately wanted to cry, not because I got hurt, But because, dude, I wrestled for 10 years. Like, I've done boxing, I've done wrestling. Like, I'm not a complete newbie with this stuff, but I'll go against people who can literally do anything and everything they want without breaking a sweat. I was going against my coach today, and he hurt his arm yesterday in training, so he could only use his left arm. And he still didn't break a sweat, just completely controlled me through and through for an entire hour. It's like, it's demoralizing in every sense of the word, but at the same time, it's also like it's a great achievement. And I know that, like, I think some people, they would do that and they would quit. They're like, all right, well, screw this. That's really the ego when you think about it, right? It's like, if you're just going to quit because you're not good at it yet, that's 100% ego based. That is 100% because it's too difficult for you to understand that, like, if you keep going, you'll get better.
Yeah.
And it's okay to lose. Like, it's totally fine. Like, at the end of the day, I know I'm going to come back. I have my fiance here. I know we're going to have dinner. We're going to hang out. It's like, losing in that situation is only making me better. And I have nothing to prove to anybody except, like, I'm going to keep going day after day to try and get better one step at a time. And that's it. And if you, I think for me, if you're not able to go through that and continue to push through that discomfort, that says a lot more about what's going to happen in the rest of your life outside of there as well.
Yeah. I think I've told you this story, but when I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I didn't stick with it for very long, full transparency. It was, I mean, that is a very difficult sport, especially for me. It's slow in the sense that it takes a long time to get great at it. And that frustrated me. But I didn't want to have surgery on my knee, even though I knew my meniscus was torn. So I couldn't sit on my heels, which is like every single day, come to the mat, sit on your heels. And I'm like in this awkward position. And it would like pop in and out of place while I was rolling with people. And then so that was like the main driving force that made me leave. But I'll never forget that there was this guy named King, this big Russian dude, and I had to go against him. And and I was like, "What the fuck? This is serious." And then James Foster, my instructor, was like, he basically was just like, "Hey, King, only legs, no arms." And I was like, "Oh shit, okay. There's no way he's gonna like crush me." He tapped me out like 5 times, just his legs. I didn't even get close, not even remotely close.
He didn't even use his arms.
No arms the whole time. And we rolled for,
that's crazy.
Like, I think it was doing like 15-minute sessions where you kind of, you know what I mean, go in a circuit.
Yep.
But, yeah, dude, it's an extremely humbling thing. I think for me, one of the most valuable lessons I learned from that, and from after I got done with that, I actually switched from that to Muay Thai, and I stuck with Muay Thai for a long time because I didn't have to worry about my knee, and I wanted to do some kind of martial arts just for the mental side of things. And the thing I learned is really being calm in a chaotic state is like it's so hard, man. I actually went to the urgent care one time because somebody was choking me out, and I was trying to resist it so bad that I wouldn't tap, and I bursted like a vessel or something. My eyes were bloodshot. I couldn't breathe. Like, it was bad, dude. And so I remember my instructor like sitting me down, having a conversation. He was like, "You need to learn how to like submit and calm down and slow down." And I was like, man, that applies to everything in life.
Dude, even that though is a great lesson, right? Like, being okay with tapping.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to tap. I never want to tap. No one. What are you saying when you tap? You're essentially saying, okay, you could have killed me, right? That's it. Like, when you tap, you're saying, I quit. You could kill me. And it's like, I'm going to lose my consciousness. You're going to break my arm. I'm going to break my leg, whatever it is. So that's what tapping is. And you're fully submitting, saying, yeah, you win. And no one wants to do that, which is why, like, it's funny for me to hear the black belts talk about the white belt classes, because they talk about, in a black belt class, people tap all the time. In a white belt class, it's very rare for someone to tap because they're just going crazy. And it's so interesting to me because this analogy, this white belt, black belt, it applies to everything in life. Like, you could have a black belt entrepreneur. You know what that means? There are, like, Gary Vee is a black belt entrepreneur, right? Versus, like, you take a black belt in you get a black belt in literally anything means they're an expert. White belt means they're a newbie. Whereas, like, I see people on, we'll talk about it like with our own clients, right? Like a white belt strength training, like, they're coming in, they don't know anything. It's like, but what do they do when they go to the deadlift bar? They try and lift as much as they possibly can. Their back is rounding, they're straining. They're not okay lowering the weight, taking their time, because they want to show you how strong they are. Where it's like, well, if they just lowered the weight and sort of tapped out to the ego and it's like, you know what, fine, I'm going to lower the weight, I'm going to focus on my technique, all of a sudden it'd be okay. It's like, it's the same thing with jujitsu, where it's like when you're getting choked out and you're fighting so hard to not tap because you don't want to be weak. It's like it would actually show a lot more strength for you to tap out and say, what did I do wrong? How can I fix that? Let's move forward. It's like there's so many parallels to this in life, where it's like, sometimes tapping out isn't a bad thing. It just means, all right, quit while you're ahead, and then let's figure out how we can get better and improve going forward. This is one of the reasons I love martial arts. There's so many parallels to life.
So many. It really does make. I think the reason I started was actually because an entrepreneur who was kind of mentoring me and I looked up to was basically like, I think every entrepreneur should be doing martial arts. And I was like, why? He was like, just do it and you'll see. And I was like, all right, well, you're successful and I respect you, so I'll do it. And although I had fun too, it was, I mean, mentally, man, it just changes how you operate day to day. I actually been
Yeah.
craving it so much ever since the last time we talked. I've been like dying to get back into it, but everything's shut down over here and I can't,
Yeah.
unless I do bag work. It's like basically like for us over here, it's like I can do bag work. Everything else is closed down for boxing and Muay Thai.
It's so interesting. I was thinking, you said a few minutes ago talking about sort of being calm in the chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about, number one, I think one of the best ways to describe what it will feel like when you're a white belt rolling with a black belt is, when you have like a blanket on top of you. Well, it's not really heavy. Like you can pull the blanket off, but
Right.
what if then someone dumped like a ton of water on top of that blanket? So now it's like really heavy and the blanket sort of forms to your body. And so now it's like very difficult. It's like maybe you're underwater or the blanket, and maybe it's like maple syrup, right? The maple syrup is just sticking to you and the blanket is starting to suffocate you because you can barely move. And the longer you sit there, the heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier it gets. And I remember when that first started to happen to me, when like I would go against someone better than me and I just couldn't move no matter what I did, they would just get tighter and tighter and tighter around me. And I couldn't find it was like I was in a cocoon that just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I would freak out. I'd get almost a claustrophobic feeling, right?
Yeah.
And I actually used to struggle with claustrophobia. Like I didn't like being in small spaces. But the more I've done this, the better I've gotten in that moment to just think and be okay and it's that the cliche saying, get comfortable being uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but it's not even getting comfortable being uncomfortable. It's like, oh no, I'm not uncomfortable anymore. I'm in a very bad situation, but I'm totally fine. Like I can think, I'm calm. And one of the things that I started to do, I would just start to count in my head. I would start to count down. I'm going to just sit here until I get to 30. So rather than trying to struggle and fight and push them off me, like I'm going to count to 30 seconds. And then from there, in that time frame, I'm going to come up with a plan and try and execute it. And I've started to notice that I do that in life in general. Like if I'm getting anxious with the political climate, with anything going on, like I'll just count. I'm going to count to 30. And like I think maybe it's a form of meditation, who knows? But in any situation, like when you feel like things are closing in on you, just, all right, I'm going to take 30 seconds. I'm just literally, all I'm going to focus on is the numbers and the counting. And then once you get to the end, it doesn't mean it's gone, but it means like, okay, cool. Now you have a plan. Now you know what to do. So it's another aspect that it's helped me a lot in, like in these high tension situations, which you feel like you can't breathe, just count, just breathe and count. And then time slows down.
I love that, man. I think it is a really cheesy quote, the whole get comfortable being
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable thing. I think being calm in discomfort is better. It was just basically what you just said. And I think that is great advice. And it is true. Like you have to get uncomfortable to grow. I think the main problem with sayings like that is that they're just repeated so much, no matter how great the
Yeah.
advice is. People hear it so many times. They're like, yeah, okay, I know. I even think about
I
that
was,
when I was having my kid. People were like, "Oh, time goes by fast. You better pay attention." Like, I know. And then now she's 2, and she's like telling me like the other day she's like, "Hey guys, check it out," and I was like, "Wait, what did you just say? I can't find my backpack anywhere." Like, man, this is freaking crazy.
That's the thing about cliche sayings is you say them so often that people don't even register them anymore. I was literally just talking about this with my buddy Mike the other day. I hate cliche sayings, not because the advice is bad, but because people don't hear the advice. They don't internalize it anymore because they've heard it so many times. So you have to figure out a new way to get the same message across.
Yeah, I like obsess with little analogies like that, dude. Like a million ways to skin a cat. I get it, but
Yeah.
why are you skinning a cat? Like, so we'd beat a dead horse. Why would you beat a horse that's already dead? Like, weird things like that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put a bug in your ear. No, don't do that. Like, I don't want a bug in my fucking ear. Like, the sayings are
I
just so
always think,
weird.
could you imagine being a non-native English speaker and hearing these phrases for the, like, no, don't put a bug in my ear. Like, did you just say that? Like, no, like, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't know what you're into, but I don't want to beat a dead
Yeah,
horse. Like,
yeah,
I couldn't imagine being a non-native English speaker and then hearing these sayings and being like, oh, I think I'm in the wrong crowd right
yeah,
now. Like, they're just talking about some weird shit.
yeah. That'd be so. That's the funny thing about getting lost in translation. But um, man, I like that discussion. I think that, like, one thing that I thought of when you were talking about the difference between white belt and black belt, I heard a quote from, I want to assume it was a martial artist, but he said to have a white belt mentality. And
Mm.
I like that because he's talking about constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly seeking more, always being humble. But the way you're framing it is like, actually more black belts have a white belt mentality, quote unquote. White belts need to figure out a white belt mentality.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think we see this in all aspects where it's like we can look at flexible dieting. You could take someone who is a white belt in flexible dieting and say, listen, like, just, it's okay. Have a slice of pizza. It's not a big deal. But that person is like, no, 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 this is a big deal. I need to know exactly how many calories are in this slice of pizza. I need to know the exact amount of fat. I need to know so that I can then plan my meals both before and after. I need to make sure because I want to make sure my macros are on point. Whereas a true flexible dieter would be like, yeah, I'm going to have the pizza. And then someone else, like the white belt, would be like, well, then what? What are you going to have with the pizza? It's like, relax. I don't know. Maybe I'll have another fucking slice of pizza if I want. It's like, it's like, because a black belt in flexible dieting, they know in the grand scheme of things, it's just a slice of pizza. It doesn't matter. Whereas the white belt, no, this isn't just a slice of pizza. This slice of pizza could seriously impact your body composition. Maybe it's going to impact your workout protein synthesis. Do you have enough protein for your, like, it's like, hold on, the white belt will overthink things over and over and over because they don't have the experience. They don't know. It's just like, and this is them like refusing to tap out. They're like, no, it's not just a slice of pizza. I'm going to grind my way through this and figure out, like, I'm not even going to enjoy the slice of pizza. I'm going to eat it just because you said it's okay, but I'm not even going to like it. I'm going to feel guilty about it. It's like the white belt versus black belt mentality is I think you need to take the time to learn and to get uncomfortable and to be uncomfortable in order to reach the black belt, which then once you're a black belt, you can truly have a white belt mentality. But
Yeah.
if you're a new white belt, you can't have white belt mentality because you don't have the time or experience yet.
Yeah, I think that experience creates awareness, and awareness is what
Mm.
precedes change, right? Like, I think we talked about
Yeah,
this last time with going to failure and training, and I tell this to people all the time. It's like, I don't promote constantly failing, but yeah, go fail, go max out, go put a little bit of weight on the bar and do as many reps as you possibly can, just for the hell of it, so you can feel what it feels like to not be able to pick up that bar anymore, or for the bar to stop on your chest and you need somebody to, like, lift it off, right? Like, because that's like,
yep,
these tools like RPE and RIR, they're great, but unless you know what failure is, you're never going to be able to really, like, adequately understand what an 8 RPE is. It's like the most confusing thing ever.
correct. And that changes. Like an 8 RPE on day 1 of training is
Hmm.
going to be very different than an 8 RPE 3 years in. Like
Yeah,
you know your body better. You understand, like, well, no, I thought that was an 8, but actually that was more like a 4. It's like, and then as you get better and better, or I thought that was an 8, and actually that was more like a 12. Like, it's like depending on who you're working with, right?
yeah.
I heard something the other day, and I didn't even think about it until just now. But I think you'll appreciate this. You've heard the nonsense that like 95% of diets don't work, like that thrown out.
Hmm.
So
I'm guilty of it.
someone
I've
recently told me,
I've thrown that out before. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
so or maybe it's 95% of dieters fail is what they'll
Yeah.
say. They'll say
Yep.
95% of dieters fail. Someone in jiu-jitsu recently told me that like 95% of white belts will never get their blue belt. And I thought that was super interesting. Number one, it makes sense just because I've seen a number of white belts start
Yeah.
and quit. They don't go anymore. But just because just because 95% of white belts don't achieve their blue belt doesn't mean that you shouldn't do jujitsu.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, just no one says like, oh well, 95% of white belts never get their blue belt, so why would you start jujitsu in the first place? Like, that's a really fucking stupid thing to say. Same thing with like, well, let's just say that 95% of dieters fail, which like is a very inaccurate thing to say. Like, it's a very short-sighted view of the literature either way. But even if that's true, does that mean you shouldn't try? It's like, and I see a lot of times what's going on is they'll start something and it's not that they couldn't have done it, it's just that they quit. And I think that a true white belt mentality, when you're a black belt and you can have that white belt mentality, is just knowing you just keep going. You just don't stop. There's going to be times in which you want to quit, but the difference between those who succeed and those who don't literally boils down to who doesn't quit.
Yeah, that's it. Was it Ben Carpenter who did?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really,
He did
really
a
good
great
video.
video.
And I, and I think when I would use that, it was very much a bait and switch kind of thing. Like let me get your attention and let me teach you like really like the important stuff. I'm not going to dive into
Yep.
this
Yep.
study. But I also have said in the past, like I'm part of that 90%, 5%, because guess what? I've failed a diet many times, which kind of takes that percentage and go, well, okay, like I failed the first time I tried, actually like first 4 times I tried diet when I was first trying to lose weight. And then I was successful. And then I did a bodybuilding show, didn't reverse, didn't do anything properly, gained all the way back. Technically I failed that diet too, like, so
Yep.
there's been so many
Yep.
times
Yep.
where I've failed diets that I think you can't look at the percentage as 95% diets fail. It's like 95% of people fail on their attempt to success, right? Like,
Correct.
that's it in anything in life.
I'd say even 100%. It's
Yeah.
like 100% of people, 100% of black belts have been tapped out. 100% of people who've done jiu-jitsu have tapped out. 100% of people who've competed at a high level in boxing have been knocked out. 100%. It's like that just whether it's in a competition or in the gym. Like you see all like some of the best boxers in the world, best fighters in the world, they'll get knocked out in the gym. But that's how then they go out and perform at the highest level when they're actually competing against someone else, is because the gym, that's where the hardest workouts are.
Yeah.
It's like people look at you now, like with your flexible dieting, and they're like, oh, it's like, yeah, it's just so easy for you. But they don't see how many years you spent tracking your calories, tracking your macros. They don't see how much time you spent learning that stuff, all the struggles that you had while you were working your way through diets, the diets that you failed when you didn't reverse diet properly after your competition, you gained all the weight back. They don't see that.
Yeah.
That's all the stuff that's behind the closed doors that no one knows. So when people are at home struggling by themselves, they're Googling how many calories are in this and they're worried about it. It's like the best thing you can do is in any regular moment, appreciate that moment for what it is. Appreciate the struggle that you're going through and understand that every time you're going through a struggle, anytime you're feeling anxious, anytime you're feeling like overwhelmed, in that moment, you're growing if you don't quit.
Yeah.
You are better because of it. You're better because of that struggle. You're better because of the time and effort that you're putting into it. Whereas if you just throw your hands up and say, all right, well, I'm done. Well, now you're not better. Now you're actually worse off because of it. But if you keep going, then you're better off for it every single time.
Yeah. I think that it kind of relates to the whole process versus outcome oriented person. If you're constantly focusing on the end, or even I said this to somebody the other day, one of my clients, I was trying to explain, they were just going through some anxiety and stuff like that. And I was just talking about like, hey man, like in my experience, what I've really kind of grown awareness around is that I've had my battles with stress, depression, anxiety, all that. And if I'm living in the past, I'm usually leaning towards depression. If I'm so focused on the future, I'm constantly living in anxiety. But every time I stay present, I'm actually fulfilled. So fulfillment is in the process, right? So, and as business owners, we can probably both relate to this, like setting targets for your business. At first you're like chasing this dollar sign or this thing, and you keep going, oh, well, got to raise the ante, and you keep doing it. And then after a while, you're like, I don't give a shit about any number whatsoever. It's not doing anything for me at all. Like, where's my fulfillment actually coming from? And finding that can be tough,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I vividly remember when I was in college making, all right, well, I want to make this much every year. And then the next year, be like, okay, well, I want to make this much every year. And like, that was like my like business goal. And I thought that I had to do that. I was told like, well, that's what you have to do as a business owner. You have to have like this goal. And I will say, I think at the beginning it was probably helpful. And like at the beginning it was probably like, okay, well, this is a good goal to have. Like it gave me a little bit of structure to sort of plan out what I would have to do in order to achieve that. But after a certain point, the focus on that number created more harm than good. The focus on that number, essentially living in the future, gave me a lot of anxiety. The anxiety of, I need to hit this number. I need to break this number in order to be quote unquote successful, and putting that pressure on me that it was essentially creating a deadline. By this day, at this time, I must reach this number, which when people do that with their weight, you and I are the first ones to be like, that's a really fucking stupid thing to do. You have to weigh this amount on this day. What are you doing? Why would you create that timeline? That makes no sense. In the same way, your income could fluctuate for any number of reasons. Your weight could fluctuate for any number of reasons. That's how this works. Your self-worth isn't 100% based on how much money you have in the bank, and your self-worth is not based on how much you weigh on the scale. It's going to fluctuate, and many different things can impact that. But as long as you're continually moving in the right direction, you have your heart in the right place, you have your mind in the right place, and you're doing things for good reasons and because you love doing them, things will fall into place.
Yeah. I've told some online coaches that I've talked to this a couple times, is like, because their argument is, well, I need a financial plan. I need financial targets, right? Like that's how, and it's like, well, yeah, you should be aware of your financial outcomes and revenue and all that stuff, but you should have a reason why you want that number, not just, well, that number sounds cool. I heard somebody else say that they made this much, right? So like an example for me, and I've used this before, is I remember the last time I set like a really, really hard financial target, it was because if we did that, I could hire my best friend full-time and he could quit his job at Boeing, which is a really good job. So it's like, he wants to do video for a living. That's what he wants. It's his passion. He wants to help me build this. I was like, if we can pull this off as a team, we can bring him on full-time, which obviously will help us grow more. But I'm giving my best friend his career.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that was enough for me to be like, yeah, like we're going to hit that fucking target because there's some meaning behind it. And if we look at weight loss, it's the same thing. Like, oh, I want to be 150 pounds. Okay. Why? Like, I'm going to ask you why until you tell me you want to like walk into the room butt ass naked and your husband to like just love what he sees. Like, okay, cool. You want that confidence? Like that's what you want.
Yeah.
Like your husband doesn't go, well, how much did you weigh? Like, I would hope he doesn't, but what does the scale say? Like, that's not, you know what I mean? That's not going through anybody's mind except your
Hold
own.
on, honey. We got to step on the scale. Yeah.
Worst husband in the
Oh
world.
my God. Yeah.
But
yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's focusing on the why. That's another cliche saying, right? It's like, well, focus on what's your why? What's your why? But it's true. You know, it's a cliche because it's true, because you do have to figure out your why. Equally as important is, I think, you also have to talk about like your how, right? Is like, I think I see a lot of people on Instagram like, well, what's your why? What's your why? And they always talk about why, but they never actually spend any time talking about how and analyzing, well, how are you actually going to do this? Like what's next? Cool. So we know your why. And that's a whole separate topic in terms of, I think some people focus so much on their why that they never actually get to the how. It's sort of, I would sort of equate this to the people who read self-help books day in and day out, years for years and years and years, but they never actually do anything.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I used to read self-help books all the time until I realized at a certain point, I was like, I'm literally reading these because they make me feel like I'm doing something. They make me feel like I'm accomplishing something. But when I close the book and then I go to bed and I didn't do anything except read this book, like I haven't accomplished anything. I think that's where, if all you're doing is focusing on your why, like, well, why do I want to do this? Why do I want to do this? Why do I want to do this? But you don't spend any time actually thinking about, well, how am I actually going to accomplish it? And you don't actually just press the play button and get moving and get started. Well, you could have the greatest reason why in the world, but it's not going to do anything for you if you don't actually do anything about it.
Yeah, dude, I've found that separating your purpose and your why is really powerful too. Because a lot of times people get them confused. You know, like my daughter is definitely my why. You know, like giving her what she needs, my family, like. But that's not my purpose. My purpose on earth isn't to be like a family man. Like my purpose is to really, like, this is change, and I think everybody's purpose will kind of change and like why they do what they do. Like once upon a time it was all about weight loss, and I've learned over the years that for me it's much more about simply improving people's life. Like I'm here to guide people to a better life, period, in any way I can, because I will have any conversation with any person. If they can leave feeling like they could maybe do this life thing a little bit better, then I won, you know. My name actually, so I'm Irish, it actually means helper in Gaelic, which is
nice.
really convenient for me. But that's my thing. It's like, I'm just here to help. Like no matter what, I'm a go-giver. That's what I want to do. But I think separating that from your why is powerful. And I also think I shared it on my Instagram this morning before we started this because it was so fucking good. You said it's not motivation. action result. It's action result motivation.
Yes.
And that's exactly
Yes.
what you're saying right here, right? Like reading those books or watching Eric Thomas yell at you motivational stuff, which is cool. He's a great guy, but it's not going to do anything besides like rile you up for 5 minutes and then you don't do shit about it.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So that action is so important.
You know, it's funny. I said a few minutes ago talking about like if you're sitting at home trying to count your calories, or if you're lying in bed and you're not feeling motivated to go to the gym, or maybe you're at the gym or you're beginning your workout but you feel creaky and achy and all this stuff, and you're by yourself. I think it's in these are the moments that are so overlooked, right? These are the moments like when you're struggling through something that are so easily overlooked. And it's so easy, especially with social media right now. You go on social media, you see what someone else is what they're saying they're doing, and they're giving off an image of what it looks like they're doing and how good they feel and how easy it is for them. And it's so easy to compare the two and to be like, oh, well, it's just not working for me. It's just not working for me. But I think the more you can realize like these moments of being alone and struggling through something like that's what you're going for. It's like sort of that, that phrase, like burning the midnight oil.
Mm-hmm.
Basically meaning you're staying up late, working really hard, and no one is seeing you do it. It's like, it's hard for me to articulate exactly the message I'm trying to get across. But the point is, in those moments when you're alone, when you're not putting anything on social media, when you're not looking at what anyone else is doing, and you're struggling through something, take a lot of pride in that moment. I think right now, especially in the world we live in, it's very easy to feel like your life isn't exciting enough. Your life isn't extravagant enough. Like you're not doing things the right way, or it's not good enough. It's so easy to fall into that trap, especially when you look on social media and you see all these highlight reels of other people. But what we don't realize is that in every moment, sort of like we'll talk about this right now. It's like, yeah, people are listening to this conversation, but as of this moment, no one's listening to this. It's just you and I talking.
Yeah.
I'm in my apartment in sweatpants, just talking to you right now. And like, this is a blessing. I love that we can do this. But as of right now, in this moment that you and I are talking, no one knows what I'm doing. No one is out here. It's a very quote unquote boring moment. But this will eventually lead to something significantly greater because of these moments. No one else is watching. And I think the more people recognize these tiny moments that we so often take for granted, these are the moments that things grow. These are the moments that make us better.
100%. I think for me, journaling is what allows me to reflect on those things. But otherwise, I'll just pass the moment, but there's plenty of times where I can think, and this sounds really weird, but I've told somebody that my spirit animal is a wolf, and I know nothing about native spirit animals, but to me, I think of a wolf and I think of like a strong, independent creature that is always like pursuing like this journey. You know what I mean? Like this, just, I don't know why a wolf stands out like that to me, but it's because of what you're saying. Like I'm comfortable being alone if I need to be alone, and being independent and doing my own thing, and quietly doing the work behind the scenes when nobody's awake yet or whatever it may be. But I'm also, I crave a tribe. I crave a pack, like I crave other people and human connection. That's why the wolf is so symbolic to me. And this all kind of like leads into one of the questions I had, which was like 2020. Like, how has 2020 changed your outlook on life or what you're going to do in life? Like what is the biggest lesson you've learned from this? I don't even know how to describe this year, because it's just, it's weird. It's really weird.
It is very weird. It's funny for me, and I'm very lucky to be able to say this. For me, 2020 has been a great year. And I'm not going to say I feel guilty about saying that, because I don't feel guilty about saying that. I am going to say, I know I'm blessed to be able to say that. Before 2020, I was traveling around the world with Gary Vaynerchuk. I was like on the road all the time. I was traveling 7 days a week. I was coach. It was insane. I was not sleeping. I would usually pull at least 1 or 2 or 3 all-nighters every week, doing an outrageous amount of work, not focusing on my health, and really just putting everything I could into my business. 2020 forced me to slow down. It was required of me to slow down. And I think that was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. It put me in a situation in which I couldn't travel. I couldn't do speaking events. And on one hand, I could look at that and be really upset. Oh, I couldn't do any traveling. I couldn't do any speaking events. I couldn't do all the things I love. But it ended up, I'm looking at it from the perspective of it forced me to, I get 8 hours of sleep every night, at least. What a blessing. It forced me to be able to stay home with my fiance, and I got engaged over 2020. And like, I think a lot of people, their relationships either crumbled or got much stronger during this time frame. And I'm very lucky to say that mine got way stronger. Like, we're together a lot, and I couldn't be happier about it. So I think for me, I talk a lot about Israel and how, I used to live in Israel and how I want to move back to Israel. One of the reasons I love Israel so much is when I'm in Israel, I'm not focused on work 24/7. When I'm in Israel, I can focus on family and I can focus on enjoying the present moment. And I'm not focused on trying to post on social media, and like all those things are great, but I'm not focused on that all the time. I can actually be much more present when I'm there. I actually feel like 2020 helped me be more present in my own, in this case, in the United States. I never really felt like that in the United States. I've always felt like that grind mentality, that work mentality. You're up early, you're in bed late, you're always working. It's like you got to build, you got to build, you got to build, you got to build. I feel like that's a very American mentality. Yeah. And for me, the only way to get out of it was to get out of the country and to go see my family in Israel. That was like where I could always be my best self. But interestingly, because of 2020, because of everything happened, like I actually felt that way here. And I think it's put a lot of things in perspective for me and showed me it's not a geographical thing. It's not like, I recently heard a great quote, something to the effect of, you can't solve a psychological problem with a geographical change. Something like that. Like, you can't like just go somewhere else in the world and expect your problems to be solved just because you're somewhere else. And I think that's often what I would do with Israel, is I would go there because I felt like just going there would change who I am. It would change, but that's not true. Eventually, I think that the psychological problem would have manifested itself if I stayed there longer and longer and longer. But because of the changes that I was forced to go through this year, I was able to address those psychological issues. I started seeing a therapist. I started, I really worked to change my life. I started doing jujitsu 6 times a week. I started getting sleeps at least 8 hours a night. I started really focusing on my health again for the first time in a number of years because I was forced and required to. And I think that it helped me actually become a better person as a result of it.
Like word for word, exactly what I would have said about my own life. And I think the funny thing is I said I felt guilty. So when you said that, I was like, man, that's such a better way to look at it. Cause I've said that before. And I even had a conversation with somebody and they were like, basically like, fuck Jeff Bezos. Like he's capitalizing on this. And I was like, well, okay, but he had a really good idea. Way before this happened. Like, can you blame the guy? And they're like, I'm not going to support it. I was like, well, I'm sure there's some like personal trainers that are like, fuck Cody McBroom. He's capitalizing on this, and he's, of
course.
Like, I don't mean any ill will towards that. I had this idea. I started this business 4 years ago. Like, this didn't, this online thing was way before this pandemic. You could have told me a pandemic was happening. What was going to come, and I would have laughed at you. I'd be like, no, you're crazy. That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, of course.
For a
Sounds
year.
like a movie.
But I had a really, really hard reality check of being present because of this. And it forced me to slow down too. And I actually said to my wife that I thought, like, I always kind of say like God puts things in your life for a reason. It's like, he's testing you, he's like trying to show you a sign so you change. And to me, that's what this was. It was like, damn, like I did miss out on some moments of my daughter learning and my daughter doing things and just being home on time. And even when I was home, was I really there? Or was I like thinking of ideas and texting and stuff? And like, how can I put my phone away? I started seeing a therapist as well, like little things like that. And it's crazy how much better I feel now. Granted, I really want this fucking pandemic to be over. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah.
But it's like word for word the exact same lessons I learned, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's funny because early on in the pandemic, like I would say I feel guilty. about it. But it was interesting because I spoke to a lot of people. I do 2 or 3 podcasts a day every day. And I would speak to a lot of people, and I kept hearing people say, like, I feel guilty because I'm actually doing really well. I feel guilty because I'm in a really good place. And I kept hearing it. And the more I heard it, I was like, this doesn't make sense. I was like, why are we feeling guilty? It's like, you can empathize with people who might not be in a good situation, but you shouldn't feel guilty for that. You can feel blessed because you are in a great situation. You can empathize with someone who is not, and then you can lend a hand and you can do your best to help them. But feeling guilt is not something that we shouldn't be feeling that on a regular basis. If you're feeling guilty on a regular basis, that's a problem you need to have addressed. I think it's one thing to feel guilty. It's nothing to recognize that you're very fortunate and blessed.
I think it's another cheesy saying: the glass half empty, half full. It's really just perspective. Like I made a post on Facebook yesterday that was like my first reaction to, because Washington shut down again. I don't know how it is in New York, but my first reaction was fuck. My second reaction was, well, I need to get better at meditating, so I'll have some time for that. I'm gonna have like a daddy-daughter day every other week. What can I do? Because there's a lot that I can do, and all those things actually make my life way better. And this is giving me the time to do it. But if I sat there and focused on all the shit that the state won't let me do anymore, I'd be pissed off. I'd be miserable. And that obviously doesn't lead anywhere. But people are afraid to have a positive perspective. I've actually even heard this, like, oh yeah, positive this, positive that, okay, but why not choose that? Like, even if it sounds cheesy to you, like, why would you not choose a positive perspective? It doesn't make sense to me.
Man, that's why I don't watch the news.
Yeah, 100%.
The news, there was a recent study that came out, which I didn't even read the full study. I just read the headline, which I hate when people do, but I did it. I just read the headline. So I didn't read the actual study, but the headline made a lot of sense to me. And it basically said to the effect of, study finds that watching just 3 minutes a day of the news will lead to significantly, I don't forget the percentage, but will lead to a radically more unhappy day. Just 3 minutes of watching the news every day is going to make you significantly more unhappiness on a scale of happiness. And I was like, oh yeah, I believe that, because it's so funny. You like watch something that, like, as you're watching, you're like, oh, it's so gross, but I can't look away, type of a thing. It's like, anytime I see the news, doesn't matter if it's the left or the right, doesn't matter who it is. Anytime I see the news come up, I immediately have a guttural response of, ugh, I don't want to watch this. But they start talking, I see a headline come up and I can't stop. I can't look away, even though my gut is telling me, don't watch this. You're going to feel bad after it. You don't know if what they're telling you is true or not. You know it's biased and one-sided. You know that it's narrative driven. You know there's a reason behind them telling you this. And you know that the only reason you're so interested in seeing this is because they have amazing copywriters who got you sucked in with that really attention-grabbing headline. But I can't look away. And by the end of it, I'm angry. By the end of whatever, I know that my emotion is going to be anger, and I'm going to say, they're idiots. They're like, their point in trying to get across whatever it is, especially right now, is to get you to say the other side are idiots. They're stupid. They're idiots. They're racist. They're whatever it is. That's their goal, is to try and get you to think that by the end of it, because you're going to want to watch longer. Their sole purpose is to get you to watch longer. The longer you watch, the better their ratings go. This is a money game. And people don't realize that. It's like, and I know if I watch the news, I'm gonna be pissed. So literally, it's one of my favorite things about jiu-jitsu is when someone's choking me out, I'm not worried about what the news is saying. It's like, I'd rather tap out here and just be focused on this, be as present as possible than be focused on that. So, man, I try to stay away from that as much as I can.
Yeah, I actually recently told Shannon we were watching something, and I was like, hey, like, let's pick a show that's positive. Because every time we get into a show or a series, it's people killing each other, selling drugs, selling guns. There's crime and rape, and like there's all these horrible things that I really don't like, but I can't stop watching. Or like, this guy got his head cut off, and I'm like, oh my God, that's so gross. But I'm like, let's see what it looks like. It's like,
oh God, that's so gross. Let me see that. No, rewind.
Why? So I'm 100% with you, man. I want to keep kind of shifting through some of these questions because I don't want us to lose our time without getting over some of these things. So one, I really want to ask you that is more of a funny question, but I've been asked to promote random things. And I'm not even remotely as close to getting as many DMs and stuff as you. What is the most ridiculous thing that somebody has asked you to be a part
Oh
of or
man.
promote or sponsor you or anything like that?
Recently someone asked me to promote. I actually had posted a video of it on my story. Someone asked me to promote it's essentially like an EMS machine for your stomach muscles, where an electric stimulation machine that you put a patch on your stomach and it contracts your abs. And so it contracts your abs, and basically what they're saying is like you get like 30,000 contractions per minute, and it's like it's basically saying that you're going to get a six pack just from putting these muscle stimulators on your stomach. And they asked me to promote that, and they was like, what are your promotion rates? Like how much for a story post, how much for a feed post, how much for a 24-hour feed post, like how much do you want to get paid? I was like, are you out of your fucking mind? It's so, because I get that every day. People ask me to promote something. Like I bet if I open my DMs right now, there would be at least one person being like, hey, what are your promotion rates? Like all the time. But that one was a more recent one that really blew my mind. It's like, you didn't do any homework whatsoever.
Yeah, I was gonna say, have you looked at any of your posts at
I,
all?
I think I forgot about this one. I was going through my videos in my phone because I was trying to delete space to make up so I could have more space to record myself getting killed in jiu-jitsu. And I was looking at videos from years ago, and I found a video. I couldn't believe this. I remember I got a DM from a company, and since then this has happened a number of times. Apparently it must be something that's worked well for them. Basically, companies that want to promote something is sometimes, instead of copying and pasting a pre-written thing saying like, hey, like here to promote this product, we'll pay you X amount. What they started doing is I would get a video, and I'd get a video from a super hot girl, and like, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I just see a video. And so I click play, and I see the video, and it's like, hey, Jordan. And like, they're personalizing it. So they just have this really attractive girl just making these videos for however many people. I don't know how many people. They're just standing there, and she's like, hey, I love your profile. I work for this company. Da 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 da. We want it. And I was like, are you kidding me? You're like, this is unbelievable that your marketing strategy is to use a really hot girl than to try and get me into selling your, like, you're ridiculous. I don't remember what the product was, but I had deleted because I screen recorded it and I sent it to my buddy Mike. I was like, dude, look at this. Are you kidding me? Because then like she's in a bikini and all this stuff. I'm like, what are you doing? This is ridiculous.
That's
So,
crazy. That one
yeah.
would surprise me. But it's also funny too how many like some of the questions you get, man. I mean, I've DM'd you multiple times, like just laughing. I'm like, and it makes me think too. I'm like, how many pictures does Jordan have of him just looking at the screen? Like, that's serious. Like, because you have to use it so many times, you know, like some of the questions, I can't remember the last one I responded to, but I was just like, how does that even make sense? What, like,
yeah, it's bewildering to me, some of the questions that I get. I will say though, from a creative perspective, the pictures have done wonders for engagement.
mm-hmm.
Like, just like I'm always interested in human behavior and engagement, like what gets people to stay and watch. Because you've seen my stories of all over the year. Over the years, I used to just do like a blank screen and I would write out my answer.
Yep.
But once I started putting the pictures of myself, engagement skyrocketed, and the number of people who would watch a story the whole way through went way up.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's interesting, like just having those funny pictures. Like, I would take your videographer, your photographer, and just like spend a couple days getting funny pictures of yourself. Like it's crazy to me, but it gets people to pay attention more. It's so funny.
I believe it. 100%. And it even goes back to the news thing. Like, rule number one in being a good blogger for fitness isn't knowing a lot of fitness content. It's getting them to read the second sentence after the first sentence.
That's exactly right.
So you have to keep people going and going and going. I mean, the picture is 100%, because I'm not going to your story personally. Not that you don't provide good information, but I'm not like waiting for like you to punch me with some information that I'm like, holy shit, I didn't even think about that. You know what I mean?
Right. It's the entertainment.
I truly am just like, I just really enjoy seeing Jordan's face a million different ways every day. Like,
I will say that the biggest one recently is my fiance's job. That's like the biggest draw to my Q&A is like, people are like, what is he going to make up next? It's like last night I couldn't go to bed until like literally the reason I stayed up like an extra 30 minutes last night is I had to think of a new job. I was like, I can't end a Q&A without this. It was like, that was the whole reason. It has nothing to do with fitness, but I know people are going to be way more engaged with my content if I like take the time to think of a really funny job.
It's
And
so funny.
last night she was a tuna tosser. She was a professional tuna tosser, which is, for whatever it's worth, it's a real sport. It's like, it's
No.
a real sport. It's a real sport where apparently the goal is you take a 20-pound tuna, and it's sort of like shot put, but with a tuna. And they see who can toss this 20-pound tuna the furthest. And the best part is someone DM me being like, oh my God, my cousin does this.
Of course they did.
Of course.
Oh my God. You know, it's funny enough. Have you ever been to Seattle? I can't remember.
I've been to Seattle once with Gary. It was a very quick trip.
Okay. So in Pike Place Market, which is like our famous like
Yeah.
marketplace, right? They do that, but it's salmon because we have a lot of salmon here. But
Shut
there's
up.
like
They
this
actually
big,
have a salmon toss?
oh yeah, so they have like this big fish market. It's a Pike Place Fish Market. I've bought fish there so many times, and they basically have like a guy standing at the like where the entrance is for like where they load stuff, and then a guy in like behind the counter by the ice, and they just fucking toss these fish like 10 to 20 yards. Like it's pretty crazy. And they
Jeez.
catch it and throw it in this thing, and people gather around and watch, and it's like they do a
That's
lot of weird,
crazy.
yeah, they do a lot of weird stuff there. Do you know who Soundgarden is, the band?
No.
Chris Cornell, and he later went and did Audio Slave and stuff. But it's like a really, really, he's passed away, but he's really, really big, famous rock band from Seattle. And they made a song called Spoon Man, and it was about this guy that played spoons. And I always thought it was so weird. And my dad was like, "Oh, that's the guy from Pike Place." I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Hey, every day I sit out there and he played spoons. People gather around, and then
That's so
made a
crazy.
song, and you can hear him in the background of the song, like playing the spoons. It's so funny. But Seattle's a weird place, man. Especially now, it's even weirder. It's even more.
The news makes it look very weird right now. That is for sure.
Yeah. So I love that, man. All right. Two final questions that we'll part with. That I think the listeners will. These are more for the listeners than for me. The other ones were more for me personally. But biggest mistakes you see trainers in our industry making right now.
There's a lot. There's a lot. I could really go off on this one for a few hours. We could do a whole, maybe when we do the next podcast on mine, we'll like really go off on this one.
Yeah.
Biggest mistakes I see trainers making right now. I will say, yeah, I remember the first podcast we ever did on your podcast. Like we did a lot of like training and stuff, and like, yeah, we'll have to do more of that. I think we might have even spoken about this on that one. I'll say number one is they're not training in person. They start off. I literally get this question every day, like every single day. I think one of the most common questions I get from non-fitness professionals is, how do I get motivated? And then one of the most common questions I get from people who want to be fitness professionals is basically like, how do I grow my online coaching business? And I'll ask them, well, how long have you been coaching in person? And I've actually recently switched my question to how many people have you coached in person? Because the question of how long have you been coaching in person was always zero. So how many people is like maybe like 2, or sometimes often 0 now as well. But people they really don't get this. And I'm going to say it over and over and over again. Another funny saying, I'm going to say it until the cows come home. I just think like being a non-native English speaker, what does that mean until the cows come home? But
where'd they go?
What coaches don't realize, or potential coaches don't realize, or up and coming coaches don't realize, is that building a great in-person business will build the foundation for a successful online coaching business. They don't get it. This is, for example, a white belt not being able to have a white belt mindset.
Yeah.
This is the perfect example of that, is they don't get it. And I like feel myself getting really riled up right now. Like they don't understand that coaching people in person is going to allow them to have a much more successful online coaching business. Not just because of all they're focused on is how many clients they have and how much money they make. That's all they're focused on. It's sort of like, as a white belt, all you're focused on, well, how do I choke them out? How do I choke them out? I just want to choke them out. Teach me how to choke them out. Teach me new ways to submit them. But as you get better and better and better in jiu-jitsu, you learn, well, it's not just about submitting them. It's about controlling them. It's about advancing your position. So you're learning all of these different things to get you into a better position, where it doesn't matter if you know how to choke them, but you don't know how to control them. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like if all you're focused on is getting more money and making more clients, well, what about the whole part of being a good coach? What about the whole part of actually like understanding coaching and understanding movement, understanding exercise and program design? It's like you can't have a lot of clients on a consistent basis if you suck as a coach. And the best way to make you a better coach is to coach people in person. And that's going to give you so many skills far even outside of just coaching. It's going to give you skills on how to interact with your clients, how to speak with your clients, how to plan for your clients. Coaching people in person for a year, 2 years, 3 years will build the foundation for a very successful online coaching business. So I think if there's one thing that I have to pick that I think they're doing wrong, it's like their first step is going to Instagram, when the first step should really be like going to your neighbor's house and coaching them for free. Like that's 100% what you should be doing for the first few years.
I love that. I give that recommendation all the time. I've told you when I first started coaching people, I said I wanted to start online business. My mentor was like, train people for 5 years in person here. I was like, all
Yep.
right, cool. Am I hired? Then I worked for 6.5 years, 6.5 years, 6 days a week training people in person. I think I did a whole podcast on the art of coaching, and I think it was a bunch of shit that people didn't think about. And it was all the things I learned from in-person coaching. Like even as simple as like, okay, you put a goblet squat on somebody's program. How do you want them to execute that?
Mm-hmm.
How do you, even more important, how do you translate how you want them to execute it? Because what you think is different than what they hear. So you have to know the right things. I have so many random weird cues in my head from years of coaching people that I'll just start throwing
Yep.
out until one sticks. And I'm like, all right, that's their cue. Like, let's just run with it, and then leaving notes for them in their program to make sure they're doing that. And dude, it's so, so important. Even just the aspect of being able to like hold a conversation with somebody. Because like if you're really coaching somebody, you're not just like counting reps and telling them what exercise to do. You got to learn about them. You got to talk about their life. You got to see what they do for a living. What do they do for fun? Like where they grow up. Like talk to them and learn how to not just be like silent rep counter, which is like the worst trainer you can get.
It's the worst trainer. Well, I would say it's funny. I would say the worst trainer, well, all right, this will be good. The worst trainer is the trainer who all they do is talk about themselves and their own problems. That's number one worst trainer. I remember working with some coaches who like I would overhear them talking to their clients and all they're talking about is how awful their life is and like about their relationship problems and about this and that. I'm like, you'd be better just to shut up. Like just stop talking, just only count reps. Because no one wants to pay a trainer to then just go and work out, which they probably don't want to work out anyway, and just hear you complain the whole time.
Yeah.
Like that's the worst. Then the second worst is the silent trainer that just counts reps and that's all they do. And you can couple that with they're checking their phone the whole time, where it's like they're like just being silent and they're just on their phone and they're counting reps, but then like they'll forget how many reps you're supposed to do. So like, yeah, 2 more. That's like the ultimate sign that their trainer like forgot how many reps you've done. So yeah, just 2 more and we'll be good. All right, done. Nice job. But yeah, I think part of the coaching, aside from program design, aside from exercise technique, aside from kinesiology and from movement and from all that stuff is understanding, all right, well, this type of person is more of an introvert. This type's more of an extrovert. This person likes me to talk to them while they're training. This person wants me to shut up and be quiet while they're going through the movement. This person wants me to give them really like very, they want to have a very critical eye with their technique. And this person wants to be more left alone and just like let them do their own thing. It's like, and this person, all right, this person's really uncoordinated. So I'm going to like make sure that when we're doing the warm up, we're going to bring them in to a private area because I know they're a little bit insecure, like with like their movement. They don't want someone to see them. Or this person is just starting out and like they sweat a lot and like they get really insecure about that. So we're going to make sure that we're near the air conditioning. We're going to make sure that the fan is over here. Like there's so many things that you learn from coaching people in person that will translate to online coaching. It's like, so that when someone reaches out to you for online coaching and says, hey, I'm really insecure about going to the gym, your response isn't saying like, well, just do it. Or like, well, everyone's insecure. It's like, well, talk to me. What are you insecure about? Okay. And then they're going to tell you it's not, maybe they're insecure about something you never could have imagined, but coaching people in person is going to give you that perspective to understand there are things that people struggle with that you could never, ever understand or make up in your head. And the only way you'll know that exists is through going through the experience of talking to real people and coaching them.
It's emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
I've read books on this just because like early on I learned that it was a skill and I was like, fuck, I really need to work on this. So I started reading books on this and listening to people talk on it. And I think it's a big part of training. And it's even why like and this is twofold. If you look at really, really experienced and successful trainers, online, in person, gym owners, anything like that, people you look up into in the industry, number one, if they are online, they weren't online once upon a time. Like they
Yep.
all did that. So you compare yourself and see what they're doing now, or see what we're doing now, and they say like, I want to do that. But you should be saying, I want to do what they were doing when they were 18 years old. Shit, you were even, I think you started younger than 18, right?
14. Yeah. I got my first
14.
internship at 14. Yeah.
That is fucking crazy. That is so young, dude. That's awesome. I was 18, and a lot of people are like, man, you started so early, but 14's nuts.
It is. Yeah.
But that's a long time of doing things in person, you know.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with, we talk about blogging all the time. It's like people are like, well, how should my Instagram be on this? I'm like, are you writing blogs? Because you should probably do that. Like that'll teach you a little bit more. And it all, I mean, it's all a comparison game, right? Like I was talking to somebody recently that was like, they basically were frustrated because they like engagement was down on Instagram, and they, you know, like, I only have 100 likes. These people I'm looking at like thousands, and I'm like, do some math. Like take your followers and find out what percentage of your followers are liking your posts. See how many they have. See how many, what percentage is, and it's the exact same percentage. I was like, your
Yep.
engagement just as good as theirs, actually.
That's exactly right.
They have a bigger C. Like just be patient, just wait. You know what I mean? It's not all about that.
Not to mention, it's always so interesting to me. It's like people are like, oh, I'm only getting 100 likes. I'm like, how many clients do you have? And they're like, 4. I'm like, could you imagine if you had 100 clients? Like if you have 100 clients, like you are crushing it. And I actually think it's too many. Like 100 clients is
Yeah.
too many for one coach to have. But like, let's say you had 50 clients. So you're complaining that you're only getting 100 likes when meanwhile, like if you had half of that many clients, you'd be crushing it. It's like, what are you complaining about? You've got all the people you need right there. It's
Yeah.
like, you don't need hundreds of thousands of followers. If that is, that's another huge mistake that I see coaches make. They're focused on is the number of followers. And I'll tell you what, this is really funny. I don't even think I've ever said this before. So I wanted to test to see what coaches would respond to, because I run a business for coaches, like that helps them build their business. So I wanted to see what they cared more about. I was like, do coaches care more about how many followers they have or how much money they're making? And I made a split test advertisement on Facebook, basically towards an email list. And one email list was basically talking about how to help you make more money as a coach. And the other email list was talking about how to help you get more followers on Instagram as a coach. The one that had get more followers on Instagram outperformed the make more money by 3 times.
That's wild.
Now, people listening might be like, well, that's stupid. Like, I would never do that. But what you say you want and what you
Yeah.
actually want are often two very different things. In the same way, your clients will often be like, well, I want to be like healthier, but really they just want to look good naked, right? It's like, you might not realize what you would actually go for in that situation. And it is crazy to me how much deep-seated emotion there is tied to a follower count. And this isn't just for coaches, but I was so interested to see in that split test, more coaches were interested in having more followers than they were in actually building their business. And then I guarantee you, if I made that a triple test where I was like, one was about getting more followers, one was about making more money, and one was about being a better coach, the one about being a better coach would have flopped. I guarantee it, like without question. The one about being a better coach would have performed nowhere near as well as the making more money, and the follower one would have been the top performing one, which just goes to show you, it's so funny. Most people would go towards the followers one. The next most people would go towards making more money. The fewest people would go towards being a better coach. The ironic thing about that is the people who went towards being a better coach would in the long run make more money. They would make more money, and they'd probably get more followers too, because they would have the knowledge and the ability to actually display that, right? It's the difference between building strength and testing strength. If all you do is when you go to the gym is you test your strength, you're never going to get stronger. But if you go in, you reduce the weight, you work around 80 to 85% instead of at 95 to 100% every time, eventually you're going to be able to display significantly more strength than other people. If you spend the first 3 to 5 years of your career just making sure you're a great coach, well, then the next 3 to 5 years of your career, you're going to be one of the top leaders in the industry. You're going to be building a really great business, helping thousands and thousands of people. It's just most people don't spend the first 3 to 5 years doing what they should be doing.
Yeah, man, I couldn't. That's wild, and I couldn't agree more. I think it's the same thing with like the whole like the muscle and strength pyramids. Everybody runs to supplements. It's like, that's at the very
Mm-hmm.
top, you know. Don't focus on supplements, bad diets, focus on calories. That's really what matters most. But yeah, that's completely ass backwards, dude. And I
Isn't that
think that
crazy?
it's so fucking crazy. And to me, it's crazy because when I think about like, I even think about like recently being like not bored, but like I could feel myself wanting to create something new and do so. And I'm like, okay, why
Mm-hmm.
is that thought creeping in, you know? And to me, it was like, I need to ignite that fire again of like, what do I actually love? And what I love is I love fucking training hard myself. And I love going through programs, and I love writing programs for people. And I like talking to my clients. Like, so getting back involved with that. But if I look back at like my 10 years of doing this, it's always been like, that's always been my priority. It's like, how do I just like be the
Mm-hmm.
best fucking coach I could possibly be? Like, I don't want to be known in the industry for anything but being an amazing fucking coach. And
Yep.
that is going to lead to even like from a business perspective, I focus more on site traffic than I do my follower account. People don't even think about that. People don't even have a website and they're worried about followers. It's
Correct.
like where are you going to send them if they go to your profile? I mean, like,
Right.
you know, so man, I think I could talk on that one for a long time too, but that's all time. I don't want to take any more of your time, man. We're both busy, but I think that was a really good podcast of just like a mix of personality stuff and then some really good stuff for the listener at the end there.
Yeah, dude, I like that a lot. Let's make sure that for the next podcast, we'll start off with some mistakes that coaches are making, because I feel like we could go on for hours about that.
I agree. And I also thought in my head as you were talking about the different trainers, like the worst and the second worst, you know how you do your videos and sometimes you're like a character. Like I
Yeah, yeah,
thought
yeah,
of
yeah.
you doing like the texter, and it's like you dressed up like texting, two more.
Well,
And then the rep
yeah. Two
counter.
more. Good.
Yeah. And then the rep counter. One, two, three. So you might need to create a video on that, man, because
the
it'd be hilarious.
complainer being like, "Oh my god, like my girlfriend is just that would be
Yeah.
so funny if we made that video. That'd be
Yeah.
good." Dude, thank you for having me, man. This was a blast.
Absolutely, man. I think everybody knows where to find you, but I'll let you say it real quick. Your website and your Instagram are probably the two, and the YouTube are probably the three most popular
Yeah.
places, right?
If you Google my name, Jordan Syatt, Syatt, I'm on every platform, Instagram, YouTube, podcast, all that.
Love it, man. Thank you again for your time, dude. I always appreciate it.
Thank you, bro. Have a good one.